June 13, 2025, the day Israel launched airstrikes on Iran, the Chinese Foreign Ministry issued this statement.
中方反对侵犯伊朗主权、安全和领土完整，反对激化矛盾、扩大冲突。
China is Iran's most important oil customer and one of its closest allies. Yet, as the hostilities unfolded, Beijing watched from the sidelines, with occasional calls for peace. What is China's relationship with Iran? And what about the other Asian giant, India? Olup is an industrial oil manufacturer located in Tianjin, a city about 2 hours away from the Chinese capital of Beijing. The 38-year-old company has been weathering economic uncertainty with China's uneven post-pandemic recovery, American tariffs, and now the Israel-Iran conflict.
和这个以色列的战争，国际油价呢飙升，对我们的企业呢影响比较大啊，因为国际原油价格的上涨，那么国内的基础油呢就要上涨。
Oil is Iran's main source of revenue, but because of U.S. sanctions, Iranian oil has very few buyers. China is, by far, the largest.
China and Iran maintain a strong trade partnership, especially in the energy sector. Despite international sanctions, China continues to import a significant amount of oil from Iran, often at discounted prices through independent refineries.
In 2017, 25% of Iran's total oil exports went to China. By 2023, it reached 89%. During the conflict, there were concerns that cuts in Iranian oil exports could hurt China. But the picture is more nuanced.
While Iranian oil is an important source, China is not heavily dependent on it. In recent years, China has diversified its energy imports, and this diversification policy ensures that it doesn't rely too heavily on any single supplier.
Besides Iran, China also imports oil from Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Oman. In 2024, the Middle East accounted for more than half of China's oil imports. Rather than the direct oil exports from Iran, China's bigger concern is what happens in the Hormuz Strait.
If this route is being cut, that means the Chinese oil market will be seriously worsened and threatened. That means it will further endanger our economic situation. That was a big problem.
Prices have since fallen back to pre-conflict levels, held back by a fragile ceasefire. But should fighting resume, Deutsche Bank predicted in extreme cases, Brent crude would rise to $120 a barrel. Almost 20% of China's energy mix is oil, and this would hit the bottom line of Chinese companies.
我们公司有很多央企啊和大的国企，还有大的民企，我们都是签长协的、长年的合同啊，一签一年，你这个价格是不能动的啊，你就是涨再多，你赔再多，你必须给你供，这也是一个风险啊。那么，这个也是在什么呢？哈，在签长协之前，一定要给自己留一点点空间啊，就是涨价风险的空间。
But oil isn't China's only concern in the Israel-Iran conflict. China has also been making investments in Iran through its Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. The Comprehensive Strategic Agreement was signed in 2021, and it's a plan for China to invest $400 billion in Iran over 25 years.
China becomes a priority for Iran to continue cooperation. Iran faces a very, very pressing economic problem and social problem. And this economic and social problem could further be turned into political chaos. So that's why I think Iran needs foreign investments. And given that Iran's relations with the Western countries, with the United States, is still facing many obstacles, Iran has very little choice.
So, why is Iran so important to the Belt and Road? The country is the land bridge connecting the Central Asian part of the BRI to the Arabian Peninsula, Turkey, and Europe. With much at stake for China, as the Israel-Iran conflict played out, some observers kept an eye on how Beijing would respond.
I don't think it would immediately rush in, nor would it keep quiet. It would save some things. It would try and involve the United Nations. It would try and bring about a multilateral sensibility to this kind of unilateral actions taken by Israel or the United States. It wouldn't rush into anything, but it would begin to make stern noises.
地区局势再度骤然升温，不符合任何一方利益。中方呼吁有关各方多做有利于促进地区和平稳定的事，避免紧张事态进一步升级。中方愿为推动局势缓和发挥建设性作用。
Yet, apart from verbal condemnation and calls for peace, China did little to involve itself in the conflict, perhaps a show of its limited leverage.
My Middle Eastern friends also share a very similar view. China just speak words rather than doing things. But the problem is that on the one hand, we should know that China does not start the war. So we just try to pacify the tension. And then second, let's face the reality, because China does not have the very determining voice over Iran, over Israel. Iran just follow their own voice, follow their own concern. It is an independent country rather than heavily dependent on anyone else.
Elsewhere, another Asian giant also watched the conflict from the sidelines. India towed a fine line between Israel and Iran. India and Iran established formal ties in 1950.
India and Iran have old relationships. There are civilization links that have existed for centuries. But more than that, I think Iran is a very important country as far as the entire history of the non-aligned movement is concerned. While they are not connected by land, they're very close to each other in terms of being called a neighborhood.
Bilateral trade between the two amounted to some $2.3 billion in the fiscal year ending 2023. In 2016, India, Iran, and Afghanistan signed the Chabahar Agreement to create a transport corridor using the Chabahar port as a key gateway.
The Chabahar port is a very strategic port for India because, as you know, when it comes to India's trade with Afghanistan, India is not in a position to send goods to Afghanistan directly through Pakistan because there are transit issues and the most favored nation clause does not apply there.
India is also working to its own alternative to China's Belt and Road initiative.
The entire maritime geography of the Arabian Sea and the one that connects the Strait of Hormuz as well as the Persian Gulf is going to become a very significant area of operation because of the upcoming project, the India, Middle East and Europe Connectivity Corridor, which is popularly known as the IMEC. And though Iran is not a direct collaborator in this project, it is over time going to become a country with which India's exchanges will determine to a very large extent what are the prospects of the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor.
Yet, India also has strong ties with the other belligerent in the conflict, Israel.
Over the years, Israel has emerged as a very important strategic partner for India. There is a lot of trade that happens between India and Israel, including defense trade, trade in metals, minerals, and a variety of other factors. And I think what has happened is that over the last 5 to 10 years, as India's relationship with the United States has grown stronger, it has had an impact, a positive impact on India's relation with a large number of US allies.
In fact, in a 2023 Pew survey, 71% of Israelis have a favorable view of India, more than any other country in the world. Likewise, since the war in Gaza, while global public opinion turned against Israel, Indians had the most favorable view of Israel among Asian countries surveyed.
India would want to maintain as stable and strong relations possible with both Iran and Israel because of respective national interests that these relationships bring bilaterally and collectively. I think what India would want to do at this stage is to hope the Israel-Iran crisis gets resolved as fast as quickly as possible.
On June 14, the China-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization issued a statement that condemned Israeli military strikes. Both Iran and India are members of the Intergovernmental Organization. But New Delhi distanced itself from the statement, saying it did not participate in the discussions that finalized the document. On June 22nd, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian about the conflict and called for dialogue and diplomacy. Prime Minister Modi, however, did not condemn Israel's attacks.
I think in a conflict like this, it's very difficult to say who is right or who is wrong, because in a sense, each country will argue that we have a ground to defend our own national interests in the point of view of our security and in the point of view of our long-term interests. I think that is a point which India respects with respect to all countries.
But the long-term impact of the Israel-Iran war could well be the death knell of multilateralism. Is the rules-based international order beyond repair?